When I was 31, I worked the night shift as an IT support tech for a regional insurance company. Now, before I go any further, I need to be crystal clear. What happened to me was documented, investigated, and ultimately never explained. From the outside, the building looked modern, all glass and steel, totally safe. But inside, it felt unfinished. Long, empty corridors. Motion sensor lights that always seemed to turn on a second too late. Entire floors would empty out after 6 p.m. And by 7, the place felt completely abandoned. Most nights, I was the only person there, which is why the one night I wasn't alone still bothers me so much. His name was Aaron. At least, that's what he told me. He said he worked in IT too, covering late system updates. He was quiet, polite, but he never used contractions. It was always I am, never I'm. Do not instead of don't. Every single sentence sounded rehearsed, almost robotic. He wasn't creepy, not threatening. He was just forgettable. Until the night everything locked down. It was late October, and a storm rolled in fast. Rain slammed against the windows, and thunder shook the entire building. By about 8:40 p.m., the last few employees had finally left. It was just me and Aaron. Then, at exactly 9 o'clock, the main hallway lights shut off. That wasn't unusual. What happened next was chunk, chunk, chunk. The heavy sound of magnetic locks engaging all across the floor. I leaned out of my cubicle. Did security announce a lockdown? Aaron was standing near the server room. No, he said calmly. I did it. I laughed, because that made absolutely no sense. You can't just lock down an entire floor. You should not leave during weather like this, he replied. The way he said should not made my chest tighten. I'm heading out anyway, I said, grabbing my stuff. Aaron turned to face me fully. You will be safer if you stay. Not we will be safer. I grabbed my bag and walked straight to the stairwell door. It wouldn't open. I tried again. Nothing. That door is fire-locked, I said, my voice rising a little. It has to stay unlocked. I rerouted it, Aaron said from right behind me. He spooned around. He was way closer than he should have been. That's illegal, I said. He just nodded, but necessary. My heart started hammering against my ribs. Okay, I'm calling security. There is no signal, he replied. Perfectly level. I looked at my phone. No bars. No Wi-Fi. The storm creates interference, he explained. People panic. Open the doors, I demanded. Not yet. That's when I ran. The lights flickered as I moved through the maze of empty cubicles. The only sound was my own breathing. I ducked into a conference room and slammed the door, fumbling with the lock. Through the glass wall, I watched Aaron walk past, slowly. He was humming. Then he stopped, right outside the door. I am not trying to scare you, he said, his voice muffled by the glass. I'm trying to prevent what happens when people leave too early. My own voice shook. What happens? He leaned closer to the glass, his face distorting slightly. They disappear. And just like that, the main lights cut out completely. The entire floor was flooded with the eerie red glow of the emergency lighting. I heard a lock disengage somewhere down the hall. Footsteps moving away from me. I didn't wait to find out more. I grabbed a heavy conference chair, smashed it through the glass wall, and ran for the loading dock. Rain was pouring in through the open bay door. I sprinted out into the storm. When I got to my car and fumbled for my keys, I looked back. Aaron was standing in the doorway. Calm. Almost. Disappointed. He raised a hand and gave me a small wave. I drove straight to the police station. The investigation found nothing. The man named Aaron didn't exist. No employment records, no security badge, no payroll. The security footage showed him entering the building with me that afternoon, but it never showed him leaving. The logs showed the floor's locks were reset at exactly 9:03 p.m. from inside the server room. I quit that job the very same night, and even now, Years later, whenever a storm hits and I hear an electronic door lock nearby, I remember what Aaron told me. Because not everyone who tries to keep you from leaving is trying to protect you. Some of them are just making sure you stay. I still hesitate before talking about it because everything that happened was technically possible. And that makes it worse. When I was 32, I worked night shifts as an IT support technician for a mid-sized insurance company in New York. And one night, my coworker locked me inside the building on purpose. It was just after 9 p.m. when the lights shut off all at once. Not a flicker, not a gradual dimming. Just dark. Then I heard it. A deep, metallic click echoed through the floor. Then another, and another. It wasn't the power going out. It was the sound of magnetic locks engaging, one by one. I stood up slowly from my cubicle. Did security announce a lockdown? I called out into the darkness. From the end of the hallway, a calm, familiar voice replied. No. There was a pause. I did. The office was in a renovated commercial building near the edge of the city. During the day, it looked modern and expensive, but at night, it felt hollow, unfinished, like a shell. After 7 p.m., most floors were empty. By 9, the building felt completely abandoned. My shift ran from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., and most nights I worked alone, monitoring servers, answering remote tickets, and listening to the city hum outside the windows. Except on rare occasions. That's when Aaron worked late. Aaron was a contract technician, mid-30s. Clean cut. Always early, always quiet. He never joked, never complained, never rushed. He spoke carefully, like every single word had been measured beforehand. Something about him felt controlled, but nothing about him seemed threatening. Not at first, anyway. That night, a storm hit faster than forecasted. Heavy rain slammed sideways against the glass. Wind howled between the buildings. Every few seconds, lightning would briefly light up the skyline. At 8:45 p.m., the last of the day shift employees signed out. It was just me and Aaron. That's when the locks engaged. I laughed nervously. You can't lock an occupied floor. You shouldn't leave during storms like this, Aaron said calmly, without even turning around. I grabbed my backpack. I live 20 minutes away. I'll be fine. He finally looked at me. His gaze was intense. You'd be safer staying. Notice he didn't say we'd be safer. He said you would. That's when it hit me. I headed toward the stairwell. The door didn't open. I tried again. Nothing. That door has emergency access, I said, my voice shaking a little. It's code compliant. I rerouted it, Aaron replied, his tone perfectly level. My stomach dropped. You. What? He took a slow step closer. People make bad decisions when they rush home at night. I pulled out my phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no emergency network. I looked up at him, my heart starting to pound against my ribs. You disabled communications? Yes. This is illegal, I said, trying to sound firm. Aaron just nodded. So is leaving someone vulnerable. That was it. Primera, ene. Motion lights flickered on and off as I sprinted down the corridor. My footsteps echoed way too loudly on the empty floor. I ducked into a glass-walled conference room and locked the door behind me. Through the glass, I watched Aaron walk past, his hands clasped behind his back. He was humming a quiet tune. Then he stopped. He turned slowly and looked straight at me. I'm not trying to scare you, he said softly, his voice muffled by the glass. I'm preventing what happens when people leave too early. What happens? I whispered, even though I knew he couldn't hear me. They disappear, and just like that, the main lights shut off completely. Emergency red lighting flooded the hallway, casting long, eerie shadows. I heard a metallic clink, like keys, then footsteps moving away. Adrenaline took over. I grabbed a heavy office chair and smashed it through the glass wall. It shattered outward with a deafening crash. I scrambled through the opening and ran. I didn't know where I was going. Just away. I found the loading dock bay, and the big rolling door was open just enough to slip under. Cold rain poured inside. I ran straight out into the storm. As I reached my car, fumbling for my keys, Primera looked back. Aaron was standing just inside the doorway, a silhouette against the red emergency lights. The rain blew past him, but he stood perfectly still. His expression wasn't angry. It was calm, almost disappointed. Disappointed, he raised his hand slightly, like a small wave goodbye. I drove straight to the nearest NYPD precinct. The next morning, police searched the building. There was no record of Aaron ever working there. No contract, no ID badge, no payroll file. Security footage showed him entering the building with me, but it never showed him leaving. The magnetic locks, they were manually reset at 9:03 p.m. from inside the server room. I quit that job the same week. Even now, living in New York, I avoid night shifts, empty offices, and buildings that suddenly go quiet, because some coworkers aren't there to work. Some are there to make sure you don't leave. I never believed that one bad decision could quietly follow you for the rest of your life. But that was before I picked up the hitchhiker on Route 61. I've been driving night routes for almost 12 years, long-haul deliveries, mostly graveyard shifts. You learn the rhythm of the road when the radio fades, when your eyes start playing tricks on you, when the dark feels a little too heavy. You also learn the one unspoken rule every trucker knows: you don't pick people up. That night, I broke it. It was just after 1:30 in the morning. The desert highway stretched endlessly ahead, lit only by my headlights. No towns for miles, no cell service. Just asphalt, sand, and the occasional reflective sign reminding you how alone you really are. That's when I saw him. A lone figure standing on the shoulder, facing away from the road. He wasn't waving. He wasn't pacing, just standing perfectly still, like he'd been placed there. I slowed down instinctively. He wore dark clothes that didn't reflect the light properly, almost like the beams were sliding right off him. As I passed, he turned his head toward the truck's low. The Libertin raised his hand. Something about the movement felt rehearsed. I should have just kept driving, but fatigue messes with your instincts, and there's this strange guilt that creeps in at night, convincing you that if something happens to a stranger, it'll somehow be your fault. I pulled over and cracked the passenger door. "Where you headed?" I asked. He stepped up into the cab without answering. The smell hit me immediately. Not sweat, not dirt. Something stale, like old air, trapped in a basement that hadn't been opened in years. He sat bolt upright, hands on his knees, staring straight ahead. "Name's Mark," I offered, trying to break the tension. He didn't respond. I started rolling again. A few miles passed, in total silence. The radio crackled faintly, but no station came through. The only sound was the hum of the engine and his breathing shallow, uneven, like he was mimicking it rather than actually needing it. "You okay?" I asked. After a long pause, he spoke. "I won't be long." His voice didn't match his appearance. It was too calm, too measured, like someone reading a line they'd practiced many times. "Were you getting off?" I asked. Soon, I glanced over. For just a split second, his reflection in the window didn't match him. The face looking back wasn't his. I blinked hard, heart racing, and looked again. Normal. Pale skin, hollow eyes, thin lips pressed together. I told myself it was exhaustion. Then the road signs stopped making sense. The mile markers began repeating. Same number, same scratches, same dent in the metal. Oberandover. "That's not right," I muttered. The hitchhiker tilted his head. "You noticed early," he said. A chill ran down my spine. "Noticed what?" I asked. He slowly turned to face me. Up close, his eyes were wrong. Not the color, the depth. They looked flat, like glass over something empty. This part usually takes longer, he continued. People don't look up anymore. I reached for my phone. No signal. Dead screen. Listen, I said, forcing a laugh. If this is some kind of joke, it isn't, he interrupted. But it is a crossing. The headlights flickered. The road ahead began to narrow, the darkness pressing closer, like the night itself was leaning in. I need you to stop, I sighed softly. My foot lifted off the gas. Without my permission, I tried to press it back down. My leg wouldn't respond. No, I whispered. No, no, no. The truck rolled to a stop on an unmarked stretch of highway. He opened the door. Before stepping out, he looked at me one last time. You were kind, he said. That matters. Then he smiled. His mouth opened too wide. Not violently. Not suddenly. Just wider than it should. He stepped into the darkness and the darkness closed behind him. The moment the door shut, control snapped back into my body. I floored it. I didn't look back. I didn't slow down. I drove until the sky began to lighten and the road signs finally showed familiar town names. At the first rest stop, I pulled over and vomited beside the truck. I checked my dashcam later that morning. The footage showed me driving alone, talking to myself, laughing at empty air. But near the end of the recording, right before the camera cut out, something leaned in from the passenger side. No face, just a shape pressing close to the lens. And a whisper, barely audible through the static. Next time, don't stop. I don't drive Route 61 anymore, but sometimes, when I'm alone in the cab and the radio goes quiet, I swear I hear breathing from the passenger seat.